Alright, today I'm going to be talking about the Stanley Milgram experiment and what he learned from that and the implications to the accounting profession. In 1973, Stanley Milgram set up an experiment where he had an experimenter, a teacher, and a learner, and they administered shocks to the learner, and essentially what was happening was a participant was being observed to see if they would perform unethical acts when told directly to by someone that was in a position of authority superior to them. And surprisingly, the results from the study, a lot of people assumed that there would be a lot of the participants would refuse to participate, but the surprising result was many were willing to go through with the experiment, administering electric shocks to people when they were told to do so, even upon the request of the learner for mercy or for the experiment to stop, things like that. Anyway, so there's a lot of implications that go on to the accounting profession and just people in general. It's kind of a shocking realization that a lot of people don't act in accordance with their ethics. And that brings me to the point of Aristotelian virtue or Aristotelian ethics. Basically, Aristotle was teaching that you can learn how to behave in the right way, and you can learn ethics. And a lot of people don't learn those lessons like they're supposed to, and that's evidenced in this experiment. But there were some that participated in the experiment that refused to behave unethically. One example of that was an immigrant from Germany who, for whatever reason, refused to participate, refused to administer those procedures and the electric shock to someone who requested for it to not happen. And it's interesting, perhaps her culture, coming from Germany and the history of that country, where people in the past were willing to let a government take over and have unquestioning authority. It's interesting, she was able to, whether because of her history or just because of how she was raised, or the way she had learned over the course of her life, she wasn't willing to let those things continue. So that is the hope from the Stanley Milgram experiment, and it's important to take away that some people did act ethically, and it is possible to act ethically. A few more things, I guess, as far as how they pertain to accountants. With the situation at hand, a lot of the rationalization that took place were people saying, "I don't have a choice. You know, or the experimenter, you take responsibility for what's happening. I'm just fulfilling my responsibility. Really, the ethical burden is on your shoulders and not mine." And it's startling how easy it is to rationalize in that way. But the important thing to take away, accountants or anyone, is that we always have a choice. We can always make a decision, and we are responsible for our decisions. That power can't be confiscated from us by a perceived or even a real authority. We always have that choice. The other thing that I found interesting, the experiment was reproduced later and with different variables. Like, for example, one that sticks out is the teacher, or the experimenter, the person saying, "give the shocks to this person," wasn't in the room. And when the participant wasn't face-to-face handling the experimenter, they were able to resist that command to perform unethical acts. And that definitely has implications to the accounting department, because when you're faced with a situation like that, it helps if you can remove yourself, if you can put yourself in an environment where you feel safe to talk about how you're feeling and things like that. You don't have to remain in that fight or flight response where you have to respond and you have to make a decision. And we've studied over this course lots of different ways that happens. How you can adjust your circumstances, and you can find creative alternatives and make sure that you don't compromise your ethics. So anyway, in conclusion, this is a really interesting case study, and one of the main points to take away is we always have a choice, and we can teach ourselves, we can learn how to behave ethically, and that is exactly what we need to do in the accounting profession and in society as a whole.